think it's recording now. Okay. Network security, like we mentioned. Get that rid of that. That's unfortunate, but okay. So network security, like we mentioned, you got to have a secure network in order to make it reliable. 3 goals of network security. This is something that you learn in just about all the security focused courses: CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. So you got to make sure that your stuff is seen only by the eyes that are supposed to see it. You got to make sure that what you're looking at was what the person that sent it to you intended, so that the data hasn't been altered in some way, and that you can get to the data when you need to get to it. So those are if all those things are met, then you got a reasonably secure network. If you can, if the confidentiality and integrity are in place, then that means that nobody's messed with things or is able to see what they shouldn't see. And if it's available, that means that somebody hasn't gone in and been able to delete things or create a denial of service situation where you can't get to what you're supposed to get to, servers or parts of the network or something. Make sure I didn't skip something. Okay. Okay, so again, this first chapter is a big, sort of covers a pretty broad spectrum of things, just networking stuff in general. But security threats are from the outside. That's what most people think of security threats. Got to set up your firewall, your IDS, IPS to detect if somebody is, gotten through your firewall and is doing things they shouldn't do. But in reality, probably the biggest threat comes from inside. A lot of times it's not a bad actor, but it's somebody who's been compromised through social engineering or something like that. So somebody's able to get someone's credentials or somehow get them to give them information that they shouldn't have. So those internal threats are probably some of the most difficult to deal with, because people on the inside have much greater access than obviously people on the outside. And the people on the outside have to do a lot harder work to get into your network. People on the inside are already there. So don't think that you have to focus all of your efforts here. You got to be concerned with, the people that are already inside. And again, not necessarily bad actors, but people that fall for it, phishing attacks, any other social engineering type things. All right. So types of external threats, usually external, because they came from the outside. Maybe they came in on somebody's USB drive or something like that, virus, worms, spyware, and that sort of thing. But they're still considered external threats, even if they walked in on somebody's person. But then things like denial of service, that usually is an external thing where somebody is basically overwhelming your network in some way or some part of your network to prevent legitimate users from accessing what they need to access. Data theft, people intercepting data, just maybe they don't steal it, like steal it, I have it, now you don't have it. but they intercept it, you still get it, but they have it too. And if it's confidential information, then obviously it's a threat. Identity theft, of course, is a huge problem. Most everybody, if anybody's been on the internet for any length of time, more than a couple of years, my guess is that if you went to have I been pawned, that you put in your email address, that it'll show that it's been pawned. Because just about, unless you are extremely careful and don't go to any of these big sites that have been compromised, Target lost millions, or not lost, but had millions of accounts stolen years ago. I mean, just about any large corporation nowadays has had a big data breach. And if you had an account, even just an email account with any of them, then there's a good chance, if it was associated with a password as well, that someone has that combination of email address and password. So big lesson there is don't use the same email address and password. Certainly don't use the same password for all of your sites. Something I used to do. It's easy, right? I mean, how many, it's like every time I turned around, I had to create a new account to get what I needed from a website. And how was I gonna, this is before the web browsers and everything started saving reasonably securely your credential information, so you didn't have to remember everything. So I used the same, password, and yeah, it definitely, it got hacked in some data breach. And yeah, so I went around, spent a couple of days and changing all my passwords in just about everything I could think of. So anyway, internal threats, either accidental or on purpose, it can happen either way. If somebody from the outside can, dang it just, somebody from the outside can compromise somebody from the inside, they've just made a big score. Because once you've got that inside person, even if they don't have high levels of privileges on your network, if the hackers are good, all they need is a foothold. And then they can start doing what's called elevation. And there's all kinds of ways to elevate, because especially with older systems that haven't already been fixed to prevent stuff. But, tons of stuff in Windows, especially, maybe even in Linux, was kept in memory, and still is actually, but they've got safeguards, better safeguards than they used to. And all you need to be able to do is have enough privileges to run a type of program to access the areas where credential information was kept. The Kerberos keys, essentially, that Active Directory uses, and you could get essentially system level privileges on an Active Directory system, even though you started with user level credentials. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting and clever ways that people, a lot of those things have been fixed, but we're still running old systems. So, okay, so layers of security, also referred to as defense in depth. A lot of times when you see stuff that's bold in these PowerPoints, it means that it's probably a key term that might show up in the quiz or the chapter exam. It also just means it's a key term that's important. So defense in depth, if you've taken CNT140, you probably already heard that term. Just means that you have layers of security. You don't depend on just a single firewall. You might have a firewall. You might even have multiple firewalls, and in between them is your demilitarized zone, where you have your web servers and stuff that's supposed to be accessible to the public. and then another firewall that someone would have to get through to get into your internal network, and then some devices like IDSs, intrusion detection systems, IPSs, anti-malware that actually looks at packets coming in, looks for the signatures of antivirus or of viruses, any kind of malware before it even gets into you. So that's what we mean by depth in defense in depth. And then you should have, host-based firewalls as well. So if something gets in through the outer layers, then you still have at least host-based firewall to add another level of security. All right, so this pretty much covers most of what I just said. ACLs, access control lists, are something that is a configuration option you put on routers usually. I think we get into that a little bit in CNT150. Unfortunately, the majority of the security focus of the CCNA is in the last class, and that along with that is ACLs. But you'll at least be introduced to them in CNT150. I mentioned IPSs, VPN. Everyone know what a VPN is? Basically, yeah, it's a tunnel. Well, they call it tunneling. It's basically, you've heard of encapsulation. Well, it's just another encapsulation. You have encapsulation on top of a packet. The outer encapsulation is unencrypted. It has to be, because routers and switches have to read the address, the source and destination address, and the port information and stuff. But then the inner packet is encrypted, and that's really all a VPN does. Is it encapsulates your data, encrypts the inner part, and has an extra layer, and that extra layer just hooks you up with the VPN server. All right, so this is, like I said, the commercial for Cisco. So what is this thing doing?
Yeah.
Is this happening in the other class by chance?
Yeah.
Or am I just lucky enough to have? Moving around here, and sometimes in the past, I've come and touched the desk, and my monitor wigs out, but not the application usually. Okay, so let's just real quick going over. This does not have the newest entry-level certification I mentioned. I'll try to get some information on that and share it with you just real briefly at some point. But the CCNA is, what these three courses, 140, 150, 160, focus on. Then there's all these developer certifications. Specialists. The specialists are usually something that is on top of, that is combined with a CCNP. So you can get a CCNP and specialize in routing and switching, specialize in security, specialize in wireless. I think there might be a couple other specializations like VoIP or something like that. And then the CCNP, that's sort of the next level up from CCNA. Actually, you can get the CCNA and then take one of the specialist exams and become a specialist, and then take the general CCNP and become the CCNP in that specialty. We don't offer those. We only offer the 3 CCNA classes. And then if you really want to be a routing and switching expert, you go to CCIE. back when CCIE first started in the mid to late 90s, that was, and it's still pretty darn coveted. You had pretty much, even Cisco said, you get your CCIE, you have a guaranteed job with us for probably back in the 90s and early 2000s for 100,000+. Nowadays, CCIEs are made, because that's a pretty tough exam to pass. There's a written part and a hands-on part. And, you know, nowadays CCIEs, if they're not making, you know, close to 200,000, then they're not trying hard to make a lot of money, because they should be able to.
No.
Take your CCNA up to a specialist to CCNP and all that. Because I
You know,
know
there's no requirement in terms of how much work experience you have through CCNP. There is for CCIE. You have to have a minimum, I think something like 18 months of practical work experience. And it might even be more than that. I'd have to look it up, because, you know, they change these from time to time and I don't necessarily follow it all the time. But for these, you can just go and take the tests. And if you pass them, you're CCNA, specialist, CCNP, whatever. But this one, you need some work experience, and if you don't have work experience, passing the practical exam is probably, you know, unless you just sit there and you have a hell of a home lab that you can do everything that they're gonna test you on in the practical lab. There's also the cyber ops associate. We do have a course for that, the CNT140 course. So if you want to get a cyber ops certified, then there's that option. So yeah. The certifications aren't the be all and end all, but they certainly help get you that interview.
Yeah,
really do. And hopefully you can back it up, you know, with what you can say during an interview, show that you really know the stuff. Okay, so you know, Cisco Academy has a you know, they want to help you get jobs too. So explore that as much as you want. You know, I wouldn't bother until you've got a couple of courses and certifications under your belt, but they do have helped people get jobs. All right, then there's a lab associated with this chapter. It's real basic. It's not anything that you're going to turn in. It's up to you whether you want to do it. It's not, you know, researching job opportunities. Maybe a little bit too early for some people to start down that road, but that lab is there to kind of get you along the way. All right, that is the end of module 1. Like I said, I probably cut it down quite a bit from the original that you've got.
Sure.
Yeah. But hopefully I didn't cut out anything that's that important. But like I said, you still need to read the material, because some of the stuff I cut out is the tests. I haven't even read module 1, to be honest, like read it. And I can answer probably all the little quiz questions correctly. But that also comes with experience. So I would still or you might do that. You might go and check out the quiz. And if you get them all right, then you probably don't need to read the material over again. So, because a lot of it is, like I said, kind of fluff. So the next chapters, you know, when we start to get more into what you probably expect to get into, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So this first day, let me just bring up, actually, just want to see week 1. Yeah, we only had scheduled to go through module 1. Now, in the past, this course has started on a Monday. And I've gone into module 2 because obviously you could. But I'm not going to do that. First day, you probably might be taking other classes. And, you usually have a lot to absorb in that first week. So we'll just leave it at this. Do the first quiz. And that's pretty much it. But I would get started depending on your level of comfort with, the stuff that I'm calling review. You might want to get started so that you are the type that needs to read it a couple times before it sinks in. Because we got to cover 2 modules next week. And so, and then we start right into the new stuff of configuring the router. Now, really, all we're going to do initially, we're going to navigate the iOS and we're going to do some basic configuration, which is kind of like the basics of securing the device, setting passwords and things like that. So, which is always good. I don't like the curriculum used to go through, the first 3 layers of the OSI model before we ever got to touching a router or switch. And it's nice that they put this in chapter 2 because you get right away knowing what you're going to be doing with routers and switches, or at least get a taste of configuring initial settings and doing some basic connectivity. So get stuff read. If you haven't already done the initial assignments, get those done. Anybody having troubles with those initial start here course readiness check assignments? If you haven't any problem, anybody on Zoom land, just send me an email and I'll help you get through it. While I've got your attention, does anybody need us to configure a VLab machine to be able to run Packet Tracer and or Wireshark?
If we had it in the last class, are we still on the VLab or do we have to log in and check it out?
Those virtual machines from previous classes will be wiped if they're not. They should be already. Maybe they're still out there, but they will be wiped. So yeah, there'll be new machines, new VLab. It'll be the same configuration, Windows 10 with Packet Tracer and Wireshark. So if anybody needs a VLab or just wants it, even if you don't need it and you have a laptop that you don't want to, slow it down by installing more software on it, send me an email, say you want a virtual machine and a VLab virtual machine, and we'll get one configured hopefully by the end of the week if you tell me quickly that you need one. Otherwise, make sure you have what you need installed on your home machine. Because you're going to be doing a lot of Packet Tracer, a little bit of Wireshark. Yeah, it's mostly for Packet Tracer. Okay, we'll see you next Monday. See you out there in Zoom land. We do have Open Lab this week. You can always work ahead if you want on some labs. I don't want you to get too far ahead, but if you start looking at the module 2 labs, the physical ones, and want to start them this week, we're open Saturday.
I know it's like super early, but I've got a honeymoon last week. Is there any way that I can schedule it?
For the freaking workout.
Yeah.
Just kind of remind me around.
Yeah.